When you think of franchising, you think of McDonald's golden arches, Subway sandwiches, maybe Starbucks on every corner. Clean corporate logos, training manuals, quality control. What you don't think about is the Mafia. But here's the thing. Decades before Ray Kroc sold his first Big Mac, organized crime had already perfected the franchise model. They just called it something else. The Mafia didn't invent crime, but they invented something far more dangerous: a system. A repeatable business model that could be copied across cities, territories, even countries. Standard operating procedures, revenue sharing agreements, brand protection through violence, and a corporate structure so efficient that legitimate businesses would eventually copy it, piece by piece. Today, we're going to show you how the American Mafia built the blueprint for modern franchising in the 1920s and 30s, how they standardized crime, how they franchised illegal operations, the same way McDonald's would later franchise hamburgers, and how the business tactics that built criminal empires are now taught in every MBA program in the world. The difference between a mob boss and a CEO? Mostly just paperwork. Before the 1920s, crime was local and chaotic. A gang controlled a neighborhood, maybe a few blocks. They ran protection rackets, loan sharking, gambling dens, but these operations were personal, face-to-face, and impossible to scale. If the boss died or got arrested, the whole operation collapsed. There was no system, no continuity, just individuals extracting money through force. Then, Prohibition hit. In 1920, the United States banned alcohol, and overnight, one of the most popular products in the country became illegal. The demand didn't vanish. It exploded, and someone had to supply it. This is where the Mafia saw an opportunity that most criminals missed. The real money wasn't in selling bootleg whiskey on one street corner. It was in controlling the supply chain across an entire city, across multiple cities, across the country. But to do that, you couldn't just be a gang. You had to become a corporation. Let me give you an example. In Chicago, before Al Capone, there were dozens of small-time bootleggers. Each one controlled a few speakeasies, paid off a few cops, and made decent money. But they fought constantly. Turf wars, shootouts, waste. Al Capone looked at this chaos and saw inefficiency. He didn't just want to win the competition, he wanted to eliminate it by building a system so dominant that competition became irrelevant. Capone's insight was simple but revolutionary. Treat crime like a business. Standardize operations, create territories, install managers, and most importantly, build a brand so feared that the threat of violence was enough. You didn't need to kill competitors every week if everyone already knew what happened to people who didn't cooperate. This is the birth of franchising, not in the boardrooms of corporations, but in the back rooms of speakeasies. So, how did the Mafia franchise crime? Let's break it down, because the parallels to modern business are impossible to ignore. Step 1. Centralized supply chain. The Mafia didn't just sell alcohol, they controlled every step of production and distribution. They owned the distilleries, or took a cut from those who did. They controlled the trucks that moved the product. They owned the warehouses, and they decided which speakeasies got supplied, and at what price. This is vertical integration. The same strategy Amazon uses today. Control the supply chain and you control the market. In the 1920s, if you were a speakeasy owner in Chicago and you didn't buy from Capone's network, you either went out of business or you got shut down permanently. Step 2. Territory licensing. Here's where it gets fascinating. The Mafia divided cities into territories. Each territory was assigned to a crew, led by a capo. That crew had exclusive rights to operate in their zone. They could run speakeasies, loan sharking, gambling, prostitution, but only in their assigned area. Cross into another crew's territory and you answered to the boss. Sound familiar? It's exactly how franchise territories work. McDonald's doesn't let two franchisees open competing stores on the same block. The franchise agreement grants you exclusive rights to a geographic area. The Mafia invented this decades earlier. They just enforced it with baseball bats instead of lawyers. Step 3. Revenue sharing. Every crew paid a percentage of their earnings to the boss. This wasn't theft. It was the cost of doing business. In exchange for that cut, you got protection, supply access, and the backing of the organization. If a competitor tried to move in, the family dealt with it. If the cops came sniffing around, the family had judges and politicians on the payroll. This is the franchise fee. When you open a McDonald's, you pay an upfront fee and then a percentage of gross sales to corporate. You're buying into a system. The Mafia operated the same way, just with higher stakes. Step 4. Standard operating procedures. This is the part most people miss. The Mafia didn't just tell crews to go make money. They had rules, procedures, a code. You didn't kill civilians. You didn't sell to kids. You kept your operations quiet. You paid the cops on time. Break these rules, and you were out. Or worse. Modern franchises have operations manuals, detailed instructions on how to run the business, maintain quality, serve customers. The Mafia had the same thing, just unwritten. And the consequences for violating standards were more immediate. Step 5. Brand protection. The Mafia understood branding before the word even meant what it does today. If you operated under a family name, Gambino, Genovese, Lucchese, you represented that brand. Your actions reflected on the entire organization. Screw up, and you damage the family's reputation. That couldn't be tolerated. Legitimate businesses obsess over brand reputation. They sue counterfeiters. They control how franchisees use the logo. The Mafia did the same thing, just with enforcement methods that would make a corporate lawyer blush. In 1931, something extraordinary happened. After a bloody power struggle, the remaining Mafia bosses sat down and created what they called the Commission. It was a board of directors for organized crime. 5 families in New York, plus representatives from other cities. They set rules, settled disputes, approved major operations, and most importantly, they prevented the kind of chaotic violence that drew too much law enforcement attention. The Commission didn't eliminate competition. It regulated it. Families could still compete for business, but within agreed-upon rules. This is antitrust regulation, corporate governance, and trade agreements all rolled into one. Except it was invented by gangsters in 1931, decades before the modern Fortune 500 structure became standard. Think about what they built. A multi-city organization with standardized operations, territorial agreements, conflict resolution mechanisms, and revenue sharing. It was a corporation in everything but name. And it worked, for decades. Let me give you a specific example. Lucky Luciano, one of the architects of the Commission, reorganized New York's underworld by eliminating the old bosses who ran things like medieval kings. He replaced them with a corporate hierarchy. He installed managers, he created reporting structures, he even formed alliances with Jewish mobsters like Meyer Lansky, recognizing that ethnic barriers were bad for business. Luciano didn't see himself as a thug, he saw himself as a CEO. And he ran the Mafia like a Fortune 500 company, just one that solved disputes with murders instead of lawsuits. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because the tactics the Mafia invented didn't stay in the underworld. They migrated into legitimate business, sometimes directly. Take Las Vegas. In the 1940s and 50s, the Mafia controlled most of the major casinos. They didn't just run gambling operations. They invented the modern casino resort model. Free drinks, cheap rooms, entertainment. The goal wasn't to make money on the room. It was to get you inside where you'd gamble. Loss leaders, cross-selling, customer lifetime value. These are MBA concepts today. The Mafia was doing it in the 1950s. Or look at labor unions. The Mafia infiltrated unions and turned them into protection rackets. But the structure they used, a centralized organization that negotiates on behalf of many smaller members, is just collective bargaining. The Mafia didn't invent unions, but they understood how to monetize the model. Vending machines, waste management, construction, trucking. The Mafia moved into these industries and brought their franchise playbook with them. They standardized operations, controlled supply, and extracted a cut from every transaction. Eventually, legitimate companies looked at these industries and said, "That's a good business model," and they copied it. Even modern corporate espionage has roots in Mafia tactics, infiltrating competitors, stealing trade secrets, sabotage. The Mafia just did it with more direct methods. So, why does this matter? Because the line between organized crime and organized business is thinner than we like to admit. The Mafia built a system that worked, and that system, franchising, territorial rights, revenue sharing, brand protection, corporate governance, became the backbone of modern capitalism. Ray Kroc didn't invent franchising when he scaled McDonald's in the 1950s. He copied a model that already existed and applied it to hamburgers instead of bootleg whiskey. The structure was the same: centralized supply, territorial licensing, revenue sharing, standard operating procedures, brand enforcement. The difference is that McDonald's had lawyers and contracts. The Mafia had enforcers and fear. But the underlying business model, identical. And here's the truly uncomfortable part. When we teach franchising in business schools, we don't mention the Mafia. We pretend this system was invented by clean corporate innovators. But the truth is that some of the most fundamental structures of modern business were perfected by criminals who understood one simple truth. If you want to scale, you need a system. And if you want the system to work, everyone has to follow the rules. The Mafia didn't just break the law. They built a business model so effective that it became the law, at least in the corporate world. So how did the Mafia invent modern franchising before McDonald's? They standardized crime. They created territories and licensed them to crews. They enforced revenue sharing. They wrote the playbook on brand protection. They built a corporate structure that settled disputes and regulated competition. And they proved that a system, properly designed, could scale across cities and survive for generations. Decades later, legitimate businesses looked at what worked and adopted the same model. Franchising, corporate governance, territorial licensing. It all came from the same place. The boardroom learned from the back room. The lesson isn't that crime pays. It's that systems scale. Whether you're selling hamburgers or bootleg whiskey, the principles are the same. Control the supply chain, standardize operations, protect the brand, and make sure everyone pays their cut. History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it will crush you all the same. If this changed how you see business or crime, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.